Hello, dear friends. It's not the first time that India Echo positively breaks my mind when he reveals alternative information to the official news and orients us about what is going on in the world. Opinion piece. The future is today. Basel IV is Gesara. Basel III is already operational. Hardly anyone knows this data. Information revealed by India Echo. August could be the beginning of the end. QFS is operational as of March 2020. The process is in place but not disclosed. Primary banking is governed by central banks. Global banks are governed by the Fed and the Treasury. Each central bank is no longer controlled by the Fed. Central banks are 10 years behind in cryptography. Let's start. The current monetary system seems exhausted as it becomes impotent to cope with the challenges following the health crisis. That's why there is much talk about what is known as financial restart or monetary reset, which implies, among other things, the implementation of a Global Economic Security and Reformation Act called Gesara, which is established as a necessary system to achieve sustainable governance based on an agreement between all countries to perform an economic restart in an organized manner and based on the quantum financial system QFS. Basel IV is Gesara, and the quantum system has already taken control of the central banks, according to the famous informer or whistleblower India Echo. Gesara will be the instrument for the cleansing and economic restructuring of the world, as it will allow to remove the ungodly actors that have financed all the illegitimate systems. Let's say that the crime has been allowed to be consummated in order to be able to accuse them in the future. In the history of mankind, all liberation movements have been characterized by the breaking of secret codes that guaranteed the domination of the elite over the rest of the humanity. Quantum economics. The famous Uruguayan informer India Echo has revealed that the quantum financial system QFS has been operational since March last year, although almost nobody knows it, and the central banks are already under its control. During an interview granted to Emilio Siesto in his channel New Horizons, Nuevos Horizontes, he also revealed that the SWIFT system has already been absorbed by the QFS and that it will continue to function as a method of money exchange together with the quantum system itself. Quantum computing systems allow for greater encryption of information, as it facilitates the handling of larger amounts of data in its operations. This provides a more secure tool for carrying out operations that require banking secrecy to achieve greater efficiency. India Echo states that what is coming is not the Basel III protocols, which are already operational, but the Basel IV protocols, which are the Gesara and Gesara rules, which include the holding of elections with the quantum system within 120 days after its proclamation, which would be extended to the rest of the governments of the world. He believes that the establishment of Gesara and Gesara would occur without Trump in power, and confirms that August would be a very important month, although the timing is unknown until now. August could be the beginning of the end. It is expected that by August, all forensic audits will have been completed with tangible results, which would trigger a declaration of nullity, which would force the calling of a new totally clean elections under military control. This discovery could provoke the fall of other governments that were placed by the same actors, as well as the calling of new elections in other countries. But everything is a speculation, and there may be variables that may delay this process because we do not know the secret plan. Speculations. India Echo explains that the central banks have been absorbed by the QFS and that primary banking is governed by the central banks, while the global banks, like the Bank for International Settlements, that control the central banking, are governed by the Fed and the Treasury. The change that has now occurred is that the central bank of each country is no longer under the control of the Fed. The dollar would have no backing until the reset process is done, and once it is done, it would be backed by the gold reserves of Zimbabwe, plus the gold reserves of China, with the rights to use that gold having been paid from 30 to 71 according to Chinese bonds called golden guns. All other dollar issues would have to be backed from 71 to 2019 by Zimbabwe's gold reserves. Excuse me. Regarding the sovereignty moves and the One People's Public Trust (OPPT) and its relationship with Gesara and Gesara, it has to do with moving away from maritime law to natural law, but it is something that it's not necessary to double with at this time, in India Echo's opinion. He is not in favor of generating litigation against banks and institutions, because justice is biased towards the dark side, because let's not forget who put the judges in their position of power throughout political campaigns financed by this institutions in plural. It would be going up against one of the largest corporate conglomerates on the planet that the Grand Coalition is fighting against. Therefore, until the cleanup that is currently taking place is finished, it is not recommended to stick your finger in the fun, because they will eat you raw, in words of India Echo, because they will look after their interests and will not allow you to stick your finger in their eye. The signals that have been given for the 8th hour global issuance process on the financial research to be published would appear a context of disclosure of the Gesara process itself. It is to say, when the disclosure of the process that is already in place begins. The proper environment for that disclosure to be released would be for the incumbent president to announce Gesara and his resignation within 120 days, coinciding with the announcement of new elections. That's the reason why Trump couldn't be the 46th president, because the alliance didn't want to burn their chip with 120 days in office, and that is why they put in a puppet to functions as a fuse when the time comes and he has to relinquish power. Although there is another version that says that the former president lost the confidence of the coalition because he didn't fulfill his contract. Requirements. Basel IV is the set of community directives and regulations that gather the guidelines and recommendations of the Committee of Banking Supervision of the Bank for International Settlements. And what it intends is to complete the package of rules that Basel III implied, which was a very important change in regulation. It aims to complete Basel III because the starting point to Basel IV is to reform or cover the deficiencies of Basel III with a triple objective: to reinforce financial stability, to ensure confidence among banks, and to increase financial resilience. In other words, if there is an external shock, banks should have the capacity to recover and return to their original state without suffering the consequences of the shock, and to fulfill their functions, which is financial intermediation and lending to families and companies. Basel IV standards are global changes to bank capital requirements that were agreed in 2017. They modify the international banking standards now known as the Basel Accords. Regulators argue that these changes simply complete the Basel III reforms agreed in principle in 2010 and 11, although most of the Basel III reforms were agreed in detail at that time. The Basel Committee itself calls them simply finalized reforms, and the UK government has dubbed them Basel 3.1. Critics of the reform, particularly those in the banking sector, argue that Basel IV requires a significant increase in capital and should be treated as a separate round of reforms. Basel IV already outlined on May 5th that this new regulation aims to address a shortcoming with the previous regulation. The new rules want banks to use standard objective data rather than their own models to calculate the risk level of their assets. Banks' internal calculations have led to large differences in the way their data is disseminated and have eroded investor confidence, but full implementation would also come at a cost. Basel IV could lead to an 11% rise in risk-weighted assets. Short news. Europe, US in different situation. The Eurozone and the US are clearly in a different situation when it comes to the inflation outlook. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde said Monday, downplaying any impact from the other side of the Atlantic. Digital euro would protect consumer privacy. The introduction of a digital euro would boost consumer privacy and protect the Eurozone from the threat of competing cryptocurrencies that could undermine the bloc's monetary sovereignty, according to the central banker overseeing its development. Fabio Panetta, a member of the European Central Bank's executive board, told the Financial Times that one of the project's key objectives is to combat the spread of digital currencies created by other nations and companies. Eurozone yields rise. Eurozone government bond yields rose Monday along with US Treasuries as investors sought to adjust to the Federal Reserve's radical shift last week, while long-term inflation expectations in Europe hit their lowest level in 3 months. Central banks are 10 years behind of their crypto plans. Central banks are trying to stay relevant in the cryptocurrency era, so they may make absurd claims as a way to try to get the world to pay attention to them, says economics writer Jeffrey Tucker. He explains that the value of a real cryptocurrency is determined by market forces, not by governments and bigwigs on the stages of financial technology meetings. And we know that central banks have specialized, especially in the last 15 months, in creating a limited amount of currency. But that's not what the market really wants. Gold rises. Gold prices recovered more than 1% on Monday after their biggest weekly drop in percentage terms since March 2020, with demand driven by a drop in Treasury yields and a pause in the dollar's rally. Bitcoin declines. It fell nearly 10% on Monday, as recent volatility in the cryptocurrency market showed no signs of slowing, with market players citing nervousness over China's growing crackdown on Bitcoin mining, with little liquidity for losses. Oil rises. Oil climbed the most in more than 2 weeks amid a weaker dollar and as key time spreads widened on expectations on further supply declines in the largest US storage hub. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.